Welcome to week 5 of the Pigskin Picks. I'm Benny Mitchell, Trey Mitchell. With us this week is the other half of the Delaware Football Podcast. Not Marty Sheehan, but his partner, John Busby. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, great for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You're the guy. Marty's sitting at 6-1, and nobody's been able to take him out yet. So we figured, hey, we'll go to his partner and see.
That's right. We'll see.
We'll see. So let's start right off. Thursday night, 5 o'clock, Hodgson and Howard at Abyssinia Stadium. This is an old Newcastle County VOTEC game. I think both these teams are going in different directions than we thought at the beginning of the season. The Silver Eagles, they're on a 4-game losing streak, albeit they played 3 top AAA Class A teams. Howard's win over Archmere was solid, and it turned heads. But last week's win over Mount Pleasant wasn't what I was expecting. But I'm going to give Howard the mulligan on that game, and I'm going to take the Wildcats to get the win here and improve to 6-0. John? And you there, John?
Yep. You know, I think it was the Howard game. I think is a letdown. You see that coming after their big win the week before against Archmere. I don't think anybody was completely surprised by that. You see that happen in high school sports all the time. You know, as Butch Simpson used to tell me, these are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. You know, they have a huge win. You can't expect them to get up for a team that they should beat by 30 points. And Howard didn't, you know, and Dan Ritter's a great coach. If anybody could have gotten those kids up for that game, it would have been him. So you just never know. You know, the Hodgson team, it's a mystery. You know, it really is. You know, they're young. They also, you know, they've had their starting quarterback's really their star wide receiver, or at least he has been. And so they're not completely healthy, still not completely healthy. You know, they're just, you know, I think a lot of people, they were so young last year. I think a lot of people thought they'd be, you know, one of the upper 6 teams in the Class 3, and that just hasn't worked out that way. You know, they're 1-4. They're almost in a must-win situation. And, you know, they've still got to play Newark, but the other couple games that they've got left are against Class 3 teams that are solid teams. And right now, if you had to bet on them, you would bet on the other team. You know, this is going to be a hard-hitting game. Both these teams are athletic. They're both big and strong. It's a district rivalry, and by district I mean school district. The VOTEC school district rivalry. So they get up for this game. Howard's off next week. This is not a must-win game for them. You don't know if they're going to go, what attitude they're going to go into it with. Like it's, hey, you know, nobody expects us to beat them type of thing. Or, you know what, this is our Super Bowl, because they don't play another Class 3 team. This is it. So this is the, you know, so-called toughest team that they will play. I'm going to pick Hodgson, and here's why. Both these teams are halfway through their season. Both teams are beat up a little bit. They're both probably a little bit tired. There's 62 kids on Hodgson's rosters. There's only 36 on Howard's rosters. And so if this game goes like a lot of these games go, where it's a hard-hitting, well-fought, tough battle till the end, there's a lot more guys that can come onto the field and be effective for Hodgson than there are from Howard, purely from a number standpoint. So I like Hodgson in this one. And I think it's a game they have to win if they have any shot to make the playoffs, since only 8 teams are making it this year.
Right, very much.
Yeah. We saw what kind of team Hodgson can be when they jumped out on Sussex Central a few weeks ago. In the past couple of weeks, like you said, their offense has kind of sputtered a little bit, and they got shut out against Sally's last weekend. And we know Howard can score in bunches, but they also had a little bit of a letdown, needing 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns at the win over Mount Pleasant. We know it's an old rivalry game, the VOTEC rivalry. I think you made a good point there about Hodgson needing this win, so I'm going to go Hodgson as well.
Okay, let's move to 6 o'clock Friday night. Number 2 ranked St. Elizabeth and Indian River. First of all, my apologies, Indian River. I even said in last week's pick, they've owned Seaford. They've had their number for the last 10 years, and I foolishly picked them to lose. Now it's past 11 years. The Indians have won 10 of 11 over the Blue Jays. But that game's in the past. This week, it's undefeated St. Elizabeth comes to town, averaging 42 points per game. This was a 14-7 game or win for the Vikings last year. I expect this game to be competitive on Friday, but St. Elizabeth wins this.
St. Elizabeth, they've got 4 blowout wins against what I call non-playoff teams. So they haven't showed a whole lot to me yet, other than that they can beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. Indian River had an impressive win over Seaford. I also looked at Seaford's schedule. I'm not sure how good Seaford is. They beat 2 out-of-state teams and 2 teams in Delaware that probably aren't going to make the playoffs. So I'm not ready to call that a huge win yet for Seaford. This is going to be St. Elizabeth's toughest opponent if you look at their schedule and you consider Seaford to be a legitimate team and Indian River to have beaten a legitimate team. This will be their toughest game for St. Elizabeth. This is a St. Elizabeth team that if you had to move up 2 teams up from Class 1 to Class 2, they would be one of them and Laurel the other one, I think. So they are good, without a doubt. I'm going to go with St. Elizabeth. I think they're going to add Indian River to their teams that they beat. And we're going to see how good Indian River is in this game. I think that's going to tell us a lot about Indian River. Can they hang with St. Elizabeth, or is St. Elizabeth going to pull a running clock on them like they've done with a couple other teams? So I'm going to go with St. Elizabeth.
It's also going to tell us if there's going to be a Class A semifinal game. We're going to have a decent Class A semifinal game too. It's going to tell us if there's 3 horses in this race. Trey?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about St. E's, you got to talk about their Quasim Benson, 12 touchdowns in 4 games. I see him adding to that. They set their offense around him, and they got a lot of players back from that state finals team last year. So I'm gonna go St. E's as well.
Okay, so let's move to Friday night, 7 o'clock. St. George's going to number 2 Smyrna. 2 good defensive teams here, but I think Smyrna has, for the time being, quieted any doubters. Shutting out Sussex Central is something that just doesn't happen very often. The Eagles' offense does need to pick up the pace with high-scoring Mergenthaler, Votech, and Dover coming up the next 2 weeks. Smyrna gets the win here.
Well, St. George's was a top 4 team in my book at the beginning of the season. And now they're on the fence as to whether they're even going to make the playoffs. I saw them play against Appoquinimink. Appoquinimink is not a dynamic offensive team by any stretch of the imagination. And St. George's was still not able to hold them, under 3 touchdowns. They got 21 points there. And St. George's was not able to do much on offense. And Appoquinimink is not considered one of the best defensive teams either. Appoquinimick's a solid team, obviously, by their 2-2 record. But I thought St. George's, I actually picked them to win that game last week. But they're 1-3. They're going up against a Smyrna team whose quarterback, Brian Wright, finally seems to be coming into his own. That offense is so much centered around the Knights, which it has been now for almost what seems like a decade. Ymir Knight, they call him the dude because the dude can do anything and he can play any position. And he shows that week in and week out. Smyrna's defense is the strength of that team, and that's odd to say. Even though they've always been a good defensive team, they've always won. When they won those 3 state championships, they put 40, 50 points on the board no matter who they played. But Mike Judy committed to a defensive strategy back then. I think they're one of the few teams, if not the only teams, where the players only play offense or defense. So the defense is always fresh. And so while their defense is the focus, that offense is one of the top offenses in the state. Any class. I think Smyrna gets an easy win. Could be a running clock against St. George's.
Right.
Yeah, last week was definitely a statement game for Smyrna. They got 3 scores on a tough Central defense, and they shut them out. But other than Dover, the Dover game, St. George's has hung tight in most of their games, which can always put you right for an upset. But not this week. I'm gonna go Smyrna.
All right, let's step back up on the list there. 7 o'clock Thursday night, number 1 Laurel versus Woodbridge. Laurel had 2 losses last year on their way to the Class A state title. Both were when they played up in class. Blue Raiders was one of them. It was a 6-0 defensive slugfest. Woodbridge has won 7 straight against the Bulldogs. But Laurel avenges that first of 2 losses from last year. One of the top young coaches in Joey Jones gets his first win over Woodbridge. Laurel moves to 6-0 here.
Woodbridge has 3 quality losses. They're 1-3, the 1 win against Sussex Tech, but those 3 losses are to quality teams. Laurel's just got one quality win, and that's if you consider Sussex Tech a quality team after what they did to Seaford, if you consider Seaford a quality team. So you got to look at it kind of that way as well. Woodbridge has a very tough Class 2 schedule after this game. I think they're in a situation where they've got to feel, and Marvin Dooley's got to be telling them, look, guys, if we're going to make the playoffs, we got to win this game. We can't lose to a Class 1 team with what we have left on our schedule. This game is at Woodbridge. I think it's a toss-up. And when I have a toss-up, I go with the home team. I'm going with Woodbridge and what a lot of people will consider to be an upset.
I agree. Right.
Yeah, I think Woodbridge is in a little bit of a rebuild. They got a lot of athletes, but they're playing a little inconsistent. Laurel's Kylese Wilson has 11 touchdowns this year. Tate Walls has had some scoring here lately, and we haven't mentioned the stud running back and linebacker Patrick Bell or quarterback Caden Shockley. So basically, what I'm saying is Laurel's got a lot of weapons. So I'm gonna go Laurel.
Yep. And we saw that a little bit in the Delmar game, John, where once Delmar unleashed all their weapons, it became a problem for Woodbridge in that game. Because I think I said 5 different Delmar players scored touchdowns on Friday night. I think that's what it was. So let's move to Polytech Wilmington Charter Saturday at 11 at Wilmington Charter. The force has been just that this year. This week they bring in Polytech, a team that has hung around. They hung around with McKean in week 1, got a win over First State Military before running into Buzzsaw, Seaford, and Laurel. I'm going to take Wilmington Charter to win this. This could be a trap game as they look a few weeks ahead for that matchup with St. E's. They better not let the Panthers hang around this game because you let a team like that hang around late in the fourth quarter, they can beat you. I'm going to take Wilmington Charter.
You know, Polytech's going to have to get to bed early on Friday night. They've got an early bus ride Saturday morning to go up to Wilmington Charter. It's probably about an hour, I would think, not Wilmington Charter, Wilmington Friends. And so, you know, I just think that it's going to be a tough thing for them to go to. And I said, Friends, it is Wilmington Charter. You got a team that's both, you know, Wilmington Charter is legitimate because of this new class system. And I like that. Right. I like that for the first time. And so I'm going to take Wilmington Charter. I think they've got the home field advantage. They're in a no-lose situation, really, because, you know, football's relevant for the first time in a long time at Wilmington Charter. And so, you know, they've got everything behind them, raring to go. There should be a decent fan base out there. People will be raring to get out and do something this weekend after sitting inside all last weekend in the rain. So I'm going to take Wilmington.
Right.
Yeah, the Force has been a great story this year. Right now they're in the race for that single A Division I title. But like you said, you can't get caught looking ahead to Tatnall or St. Elizabeth's. If they do, you know, the Panthers are a team that could get them. But I think Wilmington Charter continues. I like the home field here. I'm going to go Wilmington Charter.
All right. Soup's going to get a little thicker to stir here as we get these last 3 games. Friday night, 7 o'clock. Number 4, Archmere. Number 3, St. Mark's. That could change. We haven't quite finished our rankings yet here on Delaware Live Sports. I have to confess, pun intended, I did not see anyone beating the defending Class AA champs this year. I saw them repeating, and they still might. But watching the Hawks go down 2 weeks in a row, it just has me a bit curious with them. Now they go into the graveyard in Pike Creek, where they have had some success over the past few years. But I think the Spartans remain undefeated. They get the win here. St. Mark's has been kind of on a roll. John?
Yes, I agree with you, Benny. I think St. Mark's has this one. It's going to be a battle between 2 excellent quarterbacks, Chris Albero for Archmere and Chase Catalano for St. Mark's. St. Mark's has blown out their Class 2 opponents that they have played. They also picked up a win against Appo in a game that they didn't have on their schedule originally, but with AI folding, both teams needed to pick up a game, and it worked out for that. You know, Archmere's 2 losses are to Howard and Wilmington Friends, and so they're legitimate teams that they lost to. Archmere's not used to losing, and so it's unusual for them to lose 2 straight, but to come into St. Mark's and lose a 3rd game, that would really be tough. St. Mark's is big in the trenches. I watched that Appo game on the sideline, and they look as big as they look on TV. They've got, a D1 player in the trenches there, Luke Watson, and he's as good as a D1 player should be on both sides, on offense and defense. This St. Mark's team, if they were in Class 3, guys, they might be the 8th team in the playoffs up in Class 3 when it was all said and done. They're that good. I'm going with St. Mark's.
Yeah, St. Mark's has been on a roll. I really like them playing at home here, but like we said, Archmont has had some success in St. Mark's recently, and losing 2 in a row, it might be a wake up call, but I'm gonna go with St. Mark's. I like St. Mark's at home here.
All right, Friday night, 7:00, Appo at number 3 Dover. Up until Dover's win over Cape, each week we considered it as a test for the Senators. This week, it's a test for the Jaguars. As productive as Dover's offense has been, their defense has been equally impressive. Daniel McConomy, he carries the load for Appo. But I think they're going to have to diversify that offense to beat the Senators. I like this game to be close, competitive, and I believe Dover's offense gets it done. At least a couple touchdowns, Dover wins.
The one advantage Appo might have over Dover is this could be a potential trap game because Dover plays Sussex Central next. But I really respect and like the job that Chip Knapp has done down there. And I don't think he's going to allow that to happen, even though this is a somewhat young team in the skills positions, especially. I think he'll have them ready to play Appo. I think it helped that Appo, at least on the scoreboard, easily handled the team they played last week in St. George's. That was an impressive win for Appo. And I think that's going to get Dover's attention, which I think is going to help Chip Knapp keep his team focused on the game at hand. Appo is very one-dimensional offensively. McConomy averages over 35 to 40 carries a game, but he's so good because everybody knows he's getting the ball, and he's still averaging almost 200 yards a game, had over 200 last week against St. George's. There's kind of a running joke amongst some of the students at Appo on what the over-under and the number of passes that will be attempted is. And last week, that number was set at 2.5. And my son, who goes to Appo, he took the over, and he should have taken the under because they only threw 2 passes. And so they're one-dimensional right now. Their quarterback's young. Jacob Yard's only a sophomore. Their receiving core is young. That group can be good in the future. Unfortunately, you guys know Class 3 is so good. You don't have a lot of time to get game tested. You've got to be ready to play. And so when you have a young group in that position, it's tough to do. I think Dover takes care of business down there. I'll be disappointed if it's by a lot, just from what I saw with Appo. And I do think Appo is getting better with every game. Dover's got to be ready. It's a home game for them. Don't think they've had a whole lot of night games this year, maybe one. And so it'll be something a little bit different, whereas Appo's used to playing on Friday nights. But I'm going to take the Senators.
I think it's also Dover's homecoming, too. That's why they're playing on Friday night. Trey, you've ridden the Senators bus all year in the picks. Are we going Dover again?
We'll get to that part. Yeah, well, I mean, you guys have said Daniel McConomy, he is the heart and soul behind that offense for Appo. But I think you also made good points that they got to find other weapons. The thing I like a lot about Dover, I talked a little bit about last week, is they got speed on both sides of the ball, and they can make plays on both sides of the ball. And I think, talking about them being a little Appo being just a little one-dimensional right now, really running everything through McConomy. I think that playmaking ability and the speed on both sides of the ball for Dover is what's going to get done for them. I think they put points on the board and get the stops they need and win. I guess it's their homecoming game. Yeah, Dover gets to win here.
Yeah, John, I was watching Dover on film before I did their Cape game, and I thought, man, they're fast. And then I watched them in person, and man, they're fast. They're fast all over the field. I mean, their closing speed in the secondary is incredible. All right, let's go to our game of the week. Thursday night, 7:00, Sussex Central, number 4 Sussex Central at Milford. These two teams are coming off disappointing losses. Not that their opponent wasn't a caliber opponent, because Smyrna and Red Lion are, but both teams were shut out last weekend. This is a short week for both teams, and the tone of this game, it's going to be set early in the first quarter. The nice ground and pound wing tee offense, it's just going to prove too much for the Bucks. Sussex Central wins here.
Yeah, Sussex Central, they lost to Smyrna. I don't think anybody was surprised by that. I was a little surprised they couldn't score, although the Smyrna defense is arguably one of the best, if not the best defenses in the state. But Sussex Central has struggled against Class 3 teams. They scored just 7 points against Sally's and then 0 against Smyrna. They've managed to get into the end zone very easily against teams that are not what I call quality playoff teams in Class 3. I would expect the same against Milford. I'm not sure why they're playing this game, to be honest with you. It's one of those games. I'm sure it's a rivalry game of some sort down there in Sussex County, just like we question some of the games up here in Newcastle that they're still playing. But it's one of those games that Sussex Central is going to have to be very disappointed if it's not a running clock. Milford is 0-3 in Delaware. Their 2 wins come from out-of-state teams. And again, we never know exactly. You guys have a better idea how good those out-of-state teams are than we do upstate. But we look at the Delaware teams that we know and that we can compare to the other teams. So I think this is going to be an easy Sussex Central win. The only reason it wouldn't be maybe is because, as you mentioned, Benny, it's a short week. Sussex Central probably had a much more physical game against a very good, very big, very tough Smyrna team. They may still be a little bit in recovery mode come Thursday night. I still think Sussex Central is going to have plenty to get a victory here.
Yeah, we know Milford. They can. They have the ability to put points on the board. I know their early wins. They were getting the end zone a lot. They got some playmakers on that team. But I think a Sussex Central team. They're both coming off disappointing losses. I think a Sussex Central team that's really disappointed in not scoring against Smyrna. I think they're going to use that wing tee and they're going to pound the rock. I think their defense is going to be stingy. So I'm going to go Sussex Central.
Yeah, I think Sussex Central, they won 2 home games in the playoffs, John. And they can't drop to a game like to Milford when they still have Dover and back to an uncertain Cape and Lopa now after, seeing them lose to Dover didn't surprise me, but how Dover handled. And they got a tough one this week with Delmar. That Delmar team that played Friday night was not the same Delmar team that played Red Lion in week 2. They've got things together. So there's our picture this week, John Buzzley, of the Delaware High School football pod. Guys, I watched this. I've got to the point now where at noon, I'm on scrolling Facebook looking for it to come out. John, talk a little bit about your show and what it is exactly you guys do, because it's a little different than what everybody else does. We're all doing something a little different now.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We started out during COVID. We were kind of both bored, to be honest with you, because we broadcast for Wilmington University and their season was canceled. And we're like, you know what, we got to do something. So we started what was then the Delaware Sports Debate. And we talked about primarily COVID, and all the issues that came up with COVID. Are we playing? Are we not playing? Do you forfeit? Do you not get a forfeit when a team shows up? Parents, all that. That basically kept us on the air, to be honest with you, because there wasn't a whole lot going on. From that, we went, we did our first football season last season, and we thought, let's try to do some basketball and some other sports. And it just didn't work out. Our numbers went down tremendously. There's just not the interest that there is in football, and there's a reason that the biggest sports on national TV is football at every level. The NCAA, their biggest sport is football. NFL, biggest pro sport. High school, biggest sport. And so we decided, let's specialize and there's a lot of great people covering football. You guys are part of that. And so we wanted to be part of that, but we wanted to be a little bit different. And we thought, nobody has a podcast that is just focused on high school football statewide or anywhere for that matter. And we thought, so let's become that group, that broadcast pair that is doing just football all the time. And we'll go off the air, at the weekend after the state championship games happen, and you guys will keep going and we'll keep watching you, and you'll keep doing all the other sports. Wrestling, I know, is your big sport. I know they do the basketball as well. And that's great. And so we didn't want to become another group. The state's too small to have a lot of groups doing the same thing. Sure. And so we decided, let's be the focus on Delaware high school football. We don't feel we're taking anything away from anybody else, and we don't want to. We want to, we're all in this together. In Delaware, you got to be in this together, and we help each other out. We text each other, hey, did you hear this? Did you hear that? That type of thing. And so we enjoy it. We enjoy that sometimes we're talking about things that have nothing to do with football, the incidents that have happened. And that's kind of where I think people have looked to us to talk about that kind of stuff. But then we also want to talk about football. And the bottom line is, just like you guys do, this is all about the kids. It's all about the players. And it's trying to get as many names into our podcast. We try to keep it right at about an hour, but it's to get as many teams and as many names in that hour as we can, because kids love to hear their name. You know, we're shocked with our YouTube numbers. And I told Marty, I said, that's all these high school kids.
Right.
You know, that's all they watch YouTube. They don't listen to podcasts. They watch YouTube. And that's why we put it on there. It's why you guys put it on your thing too. And you get all those views. And so we're excited about it. We enjoy it, and we enjoy being part of the Delaware high school football scene. When we're not we don't broadcast anymore. We used to. We do miss that, and I get a little piece of doing that at the Blue Gold game every year, doing play-by-play with Bill Harmon. So I get to look back into a little bit, but we miss it. But the reality of it is, I've got 2 kids, and one's in the band and one plays soccer. Neither one's at home right now while we're recording. I got to go pick one of them up. I mean, so I'm too busy to be out on a Friday night broadcasting and leaving my wife at home. But I do enjoy jumping in once in a while when people ask me stuff like that. But Marty and I, we love it. We enjoy what we do. And we look forward to Sunday mornings, hopefully as much as you look forward to noon when the podcast drops.
Yeah, your
really
content's great. It's a great idea. I love it. I pick up some information on that. You kind of, what we talked about COVID, and then, if you remember when we first started doing picks, it was me and Trey sitting side by side in the man cave upstairs. And then he grew up on me. And thanks to COVID, we are like, how are we going to do the picks? And then COVID came. We're like, well, we'll Zoom them. This is going to be easy. And then this year was add the guest pickers. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm glad you jumped on. Downstate, I think the game to watch, I'm not going to get to go to it. I think the most interesting game in Sussex County is going to be Del Mar and Cape and Lopin over at Del Mar. John, up north, what's the game that you'd buy a ticket to?
Yeah. Well, it's not up north, but it's a north team. I think the Apple-Dover game could certainly be interesting. But if I had to go to one game, it would be the Archmere-St. Mark's game, because I think we're going to find out a lot about those both of those teams. A lot of people had Archmere in the state championship game, either against St. Mark's or against Woodbridge. I think Woodbridge has kind of put themselves out of that conversation, at least for now. But again, they've played some tough quality opponents. But I think St. Mark's can make a big statement here with a lopsided win. Do I think it's going to be lopsided? I honestly don't. But I think that's kind of what they're looking at. And I'm sure that's what their head coach, Jerry Wright, is kind of presenting to them is, look, guys, people are looking at this schedule and thinking, you know what, other than Appo, a Class 3 team, but a middle of the pack Class 3 team, we need to get a big win here over Archmere. And I think Archmere can tell a lot. And I'm sure Coach Belace is saying the same thing to his team. Guys, look, we've lost 2 games now for the first time in a long time. And so let's get back on the winning column here. St. Mark's is at home. It's a tough place to play. I don't think that's going to bother Archmere one single bit. I think it would bother some teams. I don't think it's going to bother Archmere. And so if I have one game to go to, that's where I'd be headed. I'd be headed to St. Mark's.
Folks, that's our picks for week 5 here on the Pigskin Picks. For Trey Mitchell, Don Busby, I'm Benny Mitchell. We'll see you at kickoff Thursday night.